Donald Trump is preparing to enter one of the most consequential diplomatic meetings of his presidency, at a moment when the balance between the United States and China appears more uncertain than at any time in decades. If current plans hold, Trump will arrive in Beijing for a two-day summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, marking the first visit by a U.S. president to China since Trump's own trip in 2017. The meeting comes while the world's two largest economies together control more than 40% of global economic activity. Global supply chains remain under pressure, tensions over Taiwan continue rising, and conflict in the Middle East has exposed limits in American power projection. The outcome of this summit could influence trade, energy markets, military competition, and the future direction of the international order. The contrast with Trump's first visit to Beijing is striking. In 2017, China staged an elaborate state reception for Trump and Melania Trump, including a private tour of the Forbidden City and ceremonial events designed to emphasize cooperation between the two governments. At the time, both countries were still trying to manage competition while maintaining economic integration. Since then, relations have deteriorated across almost every major category. The United States and China entered a prolonged trade war during Trump's first administration. Tariffs on Chinese goods eventually reached as high as 145%, while Beijing responded with retaliatory tariffs and restrictions on strategic exports, including rare earth minerals. The COVID pandemic further damaged trust between the two governments. Military tensions intensified in the South China Sea and around Taiwan, while Washington imposed tighter export controls on advanced semiconductor technology and artificial intelligence systems. Trump now enters the summit under very different conditions. His trip was delayed after the escalation of conflict involving Iran, a crisis that has disrupted oil markets and shifted global diplomatic attention toward the Middle East. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply traditionally passes, created immediate risks for global energy markets and particularly for China, the world's largest energy importer. The geopolitical context surrounding the summit is complex because both leaders need practical outcomes while deeply distrusting each other. Zhao Minghao of Fudan University described the relationship as one defined by persistent disagreements over trade, military relations, and Taiwan. Yet both governments also face economic incentives to stabilize ties. China continues struggling with post-pandemic economic weakness, demographic decline, and pressure on exports. The United States faces inflation concerns, supply chain vulnerabilities, and political pressure ahead of the November midterm elections. The current diplomatic opening began in Busan, South Korea, during meetings between American and Chinese officials in October 2025. Those talks produced a temporary truce in the trade war after both governments realized that escalation carried serious economic costs. China's restrictions on rare earth exports disrupted American industrial production because those materials are essential for electronics, batteries, renewable energy systems, and military technology. Some American factories experienced supply disruptions within weeks. Trade will likely dominate the Beijing Summit agenda. Trump reportedly invited executives from NVIDIA, Apple, Exxon, Boeing, and Citigroup to accompany the delegation. Boeing Chief Executive Kelly Ortberg and Citigroup Chief Jane Fraser are confirmed participants. China is discussing a possible purchase of up to 500 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft, along with additional wide-body jets. If completed, it would become China's largest Boeing order since 2017 and provide a significant commercial victory for both governments. Agricultural trade is also central to the negotiations. Washington wants Beijing to commit to purchasing 25 million tons of American soybeans annually for 3 years. while increasing imports of poultry, beef, oil, coal, and natural gas. China, meanwhile, seeks reduced export controls on advanced technologies and greater access to American semiconductor systems. Rare earth minerals remain one of Beijing's strongest negotiating tools. China controls large portions of the global processing chain for rare earth elements and magnets essential to electric vehicles, defense systems, and high-technology manufacturing. Analysts believe Beijing could offer long-term commercial access arrangements for American companies in exchange for limits on military applications and a softer trade environment. Iran has added another layer of complexity. American officials, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, publicly urged China to use its influence with Tehran after the conflict escalated. China purchases large amounts of Iranian oil and has economic leverage with the Iranian government. But analysts caution against overstating Beijing's influence. Chinese scholars, including Wang Wen and Dali Yang, argued that China cannot simply dictate Iranian decisions and sees the regional crisis largely as a consequence of American actions. Taiwan remains the most sensitive strategic issue in the relationship. Beijing considers Taiwan part of Chinese territory and has repeatedly stated that reunification remains a long-term objective, including through military force if necessary. The United States does not formally recognize Taiwan as an independent state, but continues providing defensive military equipment to Taipei. Trump's current approach to Taiwan appears less confrontational than previous administrations. He has often discussed Taiwan primarily in economic terms, especially regarding semiconductor competition. Reports that an $11 billion arms package for Taiwan has been delayed ahead of the summit have attracted attention across the Indo-Pacific region. Chinese officials may push Washington to adjust official language on Taiwanese independence and military support. One possible outcome is a temporary stabilization in relations. Trade barriers could ease, major commercial agreements could be announced, and both governments could establish limited cooperation on artificial intelligence standards, energy security, and narcotics enforcement. Such an outcome would likely calm financial markets and reduce fears of immediate confrontation. A second possibility is more complicated. If Trump makes concessions on technology restrictions, Taiwan policy, or regional military positioning in exchange for economic deals, American allies, including Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, may begin questioning Washington's long-term reliability. Former White House advisor Mira Rapp-Hooper suggested that even informal comments from Trump regarding Taiwan could alter regional perceptions of American commitment. Artificial intelligence may ultimately become the most important issue discussed behind closed doors. Both countries are competing intensely to dominate AI development, semiconductor production, and advanced computing infrastructure. At the same time, both governments understand that uncontrolled technological rivalry carries global risks involving cybersecurity, military automation, and economic disruption. Trump enters Beijing politically vulnerable, with domestic disapproval ratings reportedly reaching 62%, and international criticism following the Iran conflict. Xi enters from a comparatively stable position, but still faces economic pressures inside China. The summit therefore reflects more than diplomacy between two leaders. It represents a negotiation between competing systems attempting to manage rivalry without losing strategic advantage.